I never thought I'd be the kind of person to agree to an open relationship. But when Nathan looked me in the eyes and said maybe we should see other people, my heart cracked. I wanted to scream, to say no, but instead I just nodded, too scared to lose him. It's just an experiment, he said, like he was suggesting a new restaurant to try. We'll still be us, just more open. I forced a smile, telling myself I could handle it. But deep down I knew I was lying to him and to myself. I wanted to be the easygoing girlfriend, the one who didn't make a fuss, who could handle it without falling apart. So I smiled, nodded, and convinced myself that I could handle it. That no matter who else caught his eye, I'd still be the one he came back to. But as he spoke about freedom and new experiences, I couldn't ignore the gnawing feeling that I was losing something important, myself. Even then, I couldn't find the courage to say no. It all started when I moved to the city for college, away from the tiny, suffocating town where I grew up. My childhood was all about church, rules, and being the perfect daughter. No dating, no parties, just prayers and obedience. I didn't even kiss a boy until I was 18. So when I left that world behind, it felt like stepping out of a cage. I wanted freedom, and I found it when I met Nathan. Nathan was the opposite of everything I'd known. He was confident, spontaneous, older, and made me feel like I was the center of the universe. We met at a poetry reading during my sophomore year, and by the end of that week, I was hopelessly hooked. He was the kind of guy who seemed to have his life together, smooth talker, knew all the best spots in the city, and made me feel seen in a way I never had before. We dated for 3.5 years. He was my first real relationship, my first love, my first everything. I thought we'd end up married someday. So you can imagine how my heart dropped when he sat me down 8 months ago and said, "I think we've lost the spark." I remember just staring at him, trying to process the words. Lost the spark? I thought everything was fine. Sure, we'd settled into a routine, but that's what happens when you've been together for years, right? I asked if he was seeing someone else, but he just shook his head and smiled. No, babe, nothing like that. I just think maybe we should try opening the relationship. You know, see other people. It might help us reconnect. I should have said no. I should have walked out right then and there. But instead I froze. Nathan was the first person who ever made me feel special, and the idea of losing him terrified me. So I agreed. I told myself it was just a phase, that he needed some space to realize how much he still loved me. I didn't want anyone else, but if it meant keeping Nathan, I'd try. I thought I could handle it. At first, nothing really changed. He was still sweet, still affectionate, but there was a distance I couldn't ignore. Our weekly dates became sporadic, our late-night talks dwindled to vague texts. I was the one putting in all the effort, texting first, planning dates, trying to keep us connected. He, on the other hand, seemed more interested in his phone than in me. Then I saw her. Jessa. She started popping up in his Instagram stories, not directly, but in the background, at places we used to go. One night, she posted a picture of them at a concert holding hands. My stomach twisted, but I kept quiet. After all, I'd agreed to this, hadn't I? I was supposed to be the cool girlfriend who didn't mind sharing. But it ate away at me. I kept telling myself that if I just stayed patient, Nathan would realize I was the one he truly wanted. That he'd get bored of Jessa and come back to me. But every time we met up, it felt like I was fighting for his attention, competing with someone who wasn't even trying. One night, we were supposed to see a movie together, an old vampire flick we'd been talking about for weeks. I dressed up, feeling hopeful. But at the last minute, he texted to cancel, saying he was too tired from work. I sat on my bed, dressed up with nowhere to go, feeling like an idiot. I wasn't going to waste the night, so I went to the theater alone. That's when I met Hugo. He was my friend's older brother, someone I'd seen at parties but never really talked to. We ended up sitting next to each other, sharing popcorn, laughing at the cheesy effects. For the first time in months, I felt light, like I wasn't begging for someone's attention. After the movie, we grabbed drinks and talked for hours. He listened. Really listened. I didn't realize how starved I'd been for that kind of attention. We exchanged numbers, and that night, I couldn't stop thinking about him. It wasn't romantic yet, just something warm, comforting. When Nathan called me the next day, acting like nothing was wrong, I felt numb. I kept thinking about Hugo's smile, the way he seemed genuinely interested in what I had to say. I didn't plan on seeing Hugo again, but when he texted me a few days later, I couldn't help but smile. We met for coffee, then the gym, then movie nights. I didn't tell Nathan at first because he never asked. He didn't care. He was too wrapped up in his own life to notice I was drifting away. Then one night, after Hugo and I watched another terrible action movie at his place, he kissed me. Softly, hesitantly, like he was asking permission. I froze for a moment, caught between the thrill of something new and the guilt that still lingered. "You okay?" Hugo whispered, pulling back just enough to look at me. I took a shaky breath, unsure how to explain the swirl of emotions. I want this. I just didn't expect to feel like I'm betraying someone who doesn't even care. Hugo's hand cupped my cheek, his thumb brushing gently against my skin. "You don't owe anyone your happiness," he said simply. Those words settled something deep inside me. I kissed him back, this time with a quiet certainty. For the first time, I didn't feel guilty. It felt right. Real. I wasn't clinging to a love that was slipping away. I was choosing something new, something that made me feel alive again. The next morning, I woke up feeling something I hadn't in a long time: hope. Not just the fragile, desperate hope that Nathan would finally see me, but the kind of hope that comes from realizing you're still capable of happiness, even if it's unexpected. Nathan didn't notice the change. Our conversations were still stilted, his texts still sporadic. I had stopped making excuses for him, stopped justifying his distance. Instead, I found myself looking forward to my time with Hugo. We didn't label it, didn't put any pressure on what it was becoming. We just existed together, calm, easy, uncomplicated. One evening, Hugo and I were at his place, tangled on the couch watching a documentary about urban gardening. He kissed me again, and this time I didn't hesitate. It was soft and warm, and when he pulled back, he looked at me with this tenderness that made my chest ache. "You good?" he asked, his thumb brushing my cheek. I nodded, too afraid to say the wrong thing and break whatever magic was happening. I had been living in a fog of insecurity for so long that I almost didn't recognize what it felt like to be wanted without conditions. It was around that time that Nathan started reaching out more. At first, it was little things, texts saying he missed me, sending me songs that reminded him of us. Then one evening, completely out of the blue, he called. "Hey, can we meet up? I've been thinking about us." Curiosity got the better of me, and I agreed. We met at the coffee shop where we had our first date. He looked different, more put together, but with an edge of nervousness I hadn't seen in years. After some awkward small talk, he dropped the bomb. "I think we should close the relationship." I blinked, processing the words. "What? You're the one who wanted this." He hesitated, looking down at his coffee cup. "I thought it would help us find each other again. I didn't expect it to change things so much." I frowned, confused. "What changed?" He took a deep breath, avoiding eye contact. "I saw you with someone else. You looked happy, happier than I've seen you in a long time. It messed with my head. I didn't think you'd actually move on." Suddenly, it all made sense. He wasn't trying to fix our relationship, he was just panicking now that I wasn't waiting around. I felt a surge of frustration mixed with pity. "So, you only want to close the relationship now because you don't like seeing me with someone else?" I asked, my tone sharper than I intended. He shrugged, looking uncomfortable. "I guess. I didn't think I'd lose you. I thought you'd always be there." I realized then that it wasn't about love, it was about control. I wanted to laugh. Change things? Of course, it changed things. He opened the relationship when he was bored, looking for excitement. Now that I had found something real, he wanted to shut it down. He leaned forward, his tone gentle. "Look, I've been thinking about the future. I want us to be serious again. Just me and you." I felt a surge of anger, but I kept my voice calm. "You mean, now that I'm not waiting around for you?" He looked taken aback, like he hadn't expected me to challenge him. "No, it's not like that. I see now that monogamy is important to you. You're Catholic, right? It's the foundation of a strong relationship." It was like he was twisting the one part of myself I hadn't yet come to terms with. My faith. My upbringing. I'd always believed that love meant sticking it out through hardships, that giving up was a sign of weakness. But then I realized loving someone didn't mean losing yourself to make it work. It wasn't about enduring pain just to keep a relationship alive. Love wasn't supposed to feel like fighting to be enough. I looked at him, finally seeing through the manipulation. "You're the one who pushed for this. You can't just change the rules now that it's inconvenient. You don't get to use my beliefs to keep me tied to something that's hurting me." Nathan opened his mouth to respond, but I didn't wait to hear it. I had spent too long letting guilt dictate my choices. Not anymore. He tried to argue, saying how much he loved me, how he'd made a mistake, but I couldn't do it. Not anymore. I left the cafe feeling a mix of anger and relief. For once, I wasn't the one begging to be enough. That night, I went to Hugo's place. We were sitting on the floor, eating ice cream, when I told him everything. He listened without interrupting, his eyes kind and understanding. "What do you want?" he asked simply. I paused, realizing I didn't have an answer. Or maybe I did, but I've been too afraid to say it. "I want to choose me. For once, I want to put myself first." Hugo smiled softly. "Good. You should." And just like that, I knew what I had to do. I wasn't choosing Hugo over Nathan. I was choosing me, my happiness, my peace. I wasn't going to let Nathan's regret pull me back into a place where I didn't matter. Sometimes I think back to those days, not with regret, but with a sense of clarity. I wasn't holding on to love, I was holding on to the fear of being alone. Now, I know better. When Nathan texted later that night asking to meet again, I didn't respond. I wasn't angry or sad, just done. After that night, I started to see things more clearly. Nathan wasn't looking for a real relationship, he wanted a safety net. He didn't care about my feelings when he opened the relationship. He didn't consider how his choices would affect me. Now that he saw I wasn't just waiting around, he wanted to lock me down again. I wasn't going to let him. One evening at Hugo's place, my phone lit up with a message from Nathan. "We really need to talk. I'm not giving up on us." I glanced at it, feeling a strange calm wash over me. I put the phone on silent and set it aside. Hugo didn't push, just handed me a slice of pizza, his quiet presence reminding me that I didn't owe Nathan anything, not anymore. Hugo just nodded and handed me a slice of pizza. We ate in comfortable silence, watching some low-budget horror flick that made us laugh more than it scared us. Every now and then, I'd catch Hugo glancing at me, his eyes soft. I hadn't realized how much I missed being looked at like that, like I was enough, just as I was. The next morning, I finally texted Nathan back. I agreed to meet up one last time. I needed closure, not for him, but for me. We met at the park, the same place we'd used to go during the early days of our relationship. He was already there, sitting on a bench, looking anxious. As soon as I sat down, he started talking or rambling about how he missed me, how he realized he'd been selfish. He talked about wanting to fix things, to go back to how we used to be. I let him speak without interrupting, just listening to the familiar tone of his voice. It wasn't comforting like it used to be. It just felt empty. Finally, he paused, waiting for me to respond. I took a deep breath. Nathan, you opened the relationship because you were bored. You wanted excitement and I wasn't enough anymore. Now that I've found someone who actually cares, you're suddenly interested again. That's not love, it's possession. His eyes widened and I could see he was struggling to find the right words. That's not fair. I just made a mistake. I shook my head. You didn't just make a mistake. You took me for granted. You thought I'd wait forever while you figured out what you wanted. But I'm done waiting. I'm choosing myself this time. He looked like I'd slapped him. So, you're choosing the guy over me? I met his gaze, unwavering. No, I'm choosing me. I've spent years being your backup plan, your safe option when you're bored. I'm done with that. I deserve someone who actually values me. Nathan looked stunned, like he didn't expect me to push back. I didn't feel triumphant, just relieved. When he finally muttered, I didn't know how much I was pushing you away, I could see he meant it. But it didn't matter anymore. We parted ways without another word, the silence heavier than any argument could have been. As I walked away, I didn't check my phone, didn't look back. I wasn't waiting for an apology or a change of heart, I was done giving him that power. For the first time, I felt like I was finally walking towards something better. That evening, I met up with Hugo. We didn't do anything special, just sat on his couch with his cat purring between us. He didn't ask about Nathan, didn't press me to talk. He just let me be. When I finally told him what happened, he just nodded. Are you okay? He asked. I smiled, leaning my head on his shoulder. Yeah, I think I am. I never thought I'd find myself here, content, peaceful, not worried about what comes next. Choosing myself felt terrifying at first, but as Hugo wrapped his arm around me, I knew I'd made the right choice. Update. A few weeks have passed since I ended things with Nathan. Sometimes I still expect him to text or show up, trying to convince me I made a mistake. But he hasn't. Maybe he finally got the message, or maybe he's moved on. Either way, I'm not obsessing over it anymore. Hugo and I have been taking things slow, letting our connection grow naturally. There's no pressure, just the comfort of being with someone who values me. It's simple and easy in a way I didn't know a relationship could be. One night, as we were making dinner, Hugo looked at me and asked, do you ever regret choosing yourself over him? I thought about it, really thought about it. No, I finally said. I just regret not doing it sooner. He smiled, pulling me into a hug. Good. You deserve to put yourself first. But even as things between Hugo and me became more comfortable, I couldn't help but feel a pang of sadness now and then. Not for losing Nathan, but for how long I had convinced myself that his way of loving me was enough. I'd bent myself into shapes just to fit into his world, always hoping he'd finally see me as someone worth holding on to. One evening, I saw a picture of Nathan and Jessa at some event. They looked happy and I felt nothing. Just relief. I wasn't that girl anymore, the one waiting to be chosen. Hugo noticed me staring at my phone and nudged me. You okay? I showed him the picture. Yeah. Just realizing that I'm finally done with that part of my life. He nodded, understanding without me needing to explain. Sometimes letting go feels like the hardest thing, but once it's done, you wonder why you held on so long. We spent the rest of the evening wrapped up in blankets on the balcony, talking about anything but the past. I didn't want to dwell on what I'd lost, but on what I was gaining, a sense of self, of worth, of knowing I didn't need someone else to define my happiness. A few days later, I got a text from an unknown number. I hope you're happy. I really do. Nathan. I stared at it for a long time before finally replying, I am. I hope you were too. I didn't feel the need to reach out again. That chapter was closed, and for once, I wasn't looking back. I wasn't running from loneliness or trying to fill a void. I was just living, and it felt good. Hugo asked me once if I thought I'd ever really be over Nathan. I didn't have an answer then, but now I do. I'm not over the pain of feeling discarded, but I am over him. And that's enough. About a month after the last message from Nathan, life started to settle into a comfortable routine. Hugo and I continued to see each other, but there was no pressure, no rush to define what we were. It was refreshing to just exist together without the constant need to prove myself or worry about being enough. One evening, Hugo invited me to meet some of his friends. I was nervous at first, worried that they might judge me or wonder why I wasn't more put together. But as soon as we walked in, Hugo's friend Mia pulled me into a hug and handed me a beer. We've heard so much about you, she said with a grin. The night was filled with laughter, stories, and casual teasing. Hugo never once tried to impress anyone, he just was. And that made it easier for me to let my guard down. At one point, Mia leaned over and whispered, he's really happy, you know. I haven't seen him this way in a long time. I couldn't help but smile. Maybe I was finally allowing myself to be happy too. A few days later, I got a call from my mom. We hadn't talked much since everything with Nathan happened. She didn't know the full story, just that we broke up. Her voice was cautious. Are you doing okay? Yeah, Mom. Actually, I think I'm doing better than I have in a long time. She hesitated. You just seem different. Happier. I was worried you'd be devastated. I didn't know how to explain it. It's weird. I thought I'd be more broken up about it, but letting go of someone who never really saw me for who I was, it's freeing. She didn't respond right away, just sighed. I just want you to be loved. That's all. I smiled to myself. I think I'm finally learning how to love myself first. The rest will come when it's meant to. That weekend, Hugo and I decided to take a short trip to the coast. It wasn't anything fancy, just a little cabin by the beach, far from the noise of the city. We spent the days walking along the shore, talking about everything and nothing. One night, while lying on the sand, he turned to me and asked, "Do you think you'd have done it differently if he hadn't suggested the open relationship?" I thought about it. Maybe. But if he hadn't pushed me away, I never would have found myself. I was so wrapped up in being what he wanted that I forgot to be myself. Hugo nodded, tracing patterns in the sand with his fingers. "I'm glad you found your way out." We fell asleep that night with the waves crashing in the distance, and for once, my dreams weren't filled with regrets or second-guessing. Just peace. The next morning, I checked my phone to find a message from Nathan. "I heard you're seeing someone. I guess I really messed up. Just wanted to say sorry." I didn't respond. Not because I was angry, but because I didn't feel the need to. Sometimes the best response is silence, letting the past stay where it belongs. When we got back to the city, I felt lighter, more certain that I'd made the right choices. Hugo wrapped his arms around me as we stood on the balcony watching the sunset. "You look happy," he whispered. I looked up at him, realizing that I finally was. "I think I am." Update. Time moved on, and with it, so did I. I didn't realize how much of myself I had buried under the weight of my relationship with Nathan. Now, with Hugo, it was like rediscovering parts of me that had been neglected for too long. We didn't rush into labeling what we had, and that was fine. It was enough to just be together. One afternoon, while scrolling through old photos on my phone, I stumbled upon an album labeled Us. It was full of pictures of Nathan and me smiling at parties, exploring the city, celebrating birthdays. I expected to feel a pang of sadness, but instead I felt something softer. Gratitude, maybe? Those moments weren't lies, they just didn't last. And that was okay. I decided to delete the album, not out of spite but as a way to move forward. I wasn't erasing the past, I was just choosing not to carry it around anymore. That evening, Hugo came over with takeout and noticed I was quieter than usual. "What's on your mind?" he asked, handing me a carton of noodles. I shrugged, unsure how to explain it. Just letting go of things I've held onto for too long. He didn't push, just sat with me in comfortable silence, eating and watching the city lights through the window. At some point, he reached over and laced his fingers with mine, giving a reassuring squeeze. A few days later, I got a message from Jessa. I hesitated before opening it, unsure of what she could possibly want. "Just wanted you to know Nathan and I broke up. Hope you're doing okay." It felt odd, almost surreal. I wasn't mad at her anymore, maybe I never really was. She was just another person caught up in Nathan's need for excitement. I didn't reply, but I didn't feel bitter. Just relieved. Hugo noticed me staring at my phone and raised an eyebrow. I explained briefly, and he just nodded, not judging or reacting. "Are you okay?" he asked. "Yeah, I think I'm finally okay." That weekend, Hugo invited me to his sister's birthday party. I was nervous, meeting his family felt like a big step. But when we arrived, his mom greeted me with a warm hug, his sister pulled me into the group like I'd always been there, and for once, I didn't feel out of place. Later that night, when we were alone, Hugo wrapped me in his arms and whispered, "I like seeing you like this." "Happy." I buried my face in his shoulder, not wanting him to see the tears welling up. "I didn't think I'd get here," I admitted. He kissed the top of my head. "You did it. You chose yourself. That's what makes you strong." That night, as I lay next to Hugo, I realized I didn't miss the old version of me, the girl who always waited for love to be enough. I wasn't waiting anymore. I was living. And that made all the difference. 6 months have passed since I made the choice to put myself first. Sometimes I still think about Nathan, not out of longing, but to remind myself of how far I've come. Back then, I wasn't holding on to love, I was holding on to the fear of being alone. Now, I know better. Hugo and I have built something real, something that doesn't come with conditions or ultimatums. We take it slow, learning each other in small, meaningful ways. The other night, while cooking dinner, he turned to me and said, "You know, I've never been this comfortable just being. No expectations, no pressure." I smiled, understanding exactly what he meant. It's strange how love can feel so light when you're not constantly fighting to keep it. We still have our moments, times when I doubt myself, when old insecurities try to claw their way back. But Hugo never makes me feel bad for being human. He just listens and holds me, reminding me that I don't have to carry everything alone. One day, while organizing my closet, I found an old journal from my early days with Nathan. The pages were filled with desperate hope, pleas for him to notice me more, to love me the way I loved him. I couldn't help but laugh at how much I had bent myself into shapes I didn't recognize just to keep his attention. I closed the journal and tucked it away, not out of sadness, but as a reminder of how far I've come. When I told Hugo about it later, he just grinned. "You've grown. You're not that girl anymore." He was right. I wasn't. I had learned that love wasn't supposed to feel like an uphill battle, that I didn't need to prove my worth to be cherished. With Hugo, it was different, peaceful, steady, and real. And for the first time, I knew I didn't have to settle. Sometimes I still get texts from Nathan, usually late at night, vague apologies wrapped in nostalgia. I never respond. I think he's still trying to figure out where it all went wrong, why I didn't stay his constant, reliable fallback. When Hugo asked if I ever regretted how it all played out, I just smiled. No, I didn't lose anything worth keeping. Now, I know I can choose myself. He just nodded, a soft smile spreading across his face. That's what makes you stronger than you think. We don't talk about the future in big, sweeping declarations. We just take it day by day, building something rooted in honesty and respect. There's no rush, no need to define everything. It just is, and that's enough. As I sit here writing this, I realize how much I've changed, not just in how I approach relationships, but in how I see myself. I'm not that girl who begged for attention, who accepted being second place. I'm not the girl who thought love meant sacrificing her own happiness. Now, I'm just me, imperfect, growing, learning. And for once, I'm proud of that. If you're wondering if it's worth leaving behind a love that only shows up when it's convenient, know that it is. You deserve someone who chooses you without hesitation, who doesn't make you fight for the bare minimum. You deserve to be happy just as you are. I found that in myself first. And that's why I was finally ready to find it with someone else. Real love doesn't demand you to prove your worth, it just stays, without question. And for the first time, I knew I didn't have to settle for less. Hope you enjoyed this story as much as I do. Help this small channel grow by hitting that like button, subscribing, and sharing with your friends. Every bit of support means the world. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.